Caliph stepped into the absolute zero of the vacuum beyond the shield. Her blood began to boil, a physical scream silenced by the lack of air. Under a rain of Krell kinetic fire, she physically wrenched the alignment gears into place. One slip meant the atmosphere of Ethelgard would vent into the hungry dark. She didn't slip. Would you step into the freezing void to save a world that already called you broken? Ask yourself what you would sacrifice for a people who turn their backs on you. Let's go back to where the silence began. The faint hum of a data slate with a cracked screen corner was the only sound in the princess's chambers, 6 weeks before the Krell kinetic fire turned the Ethelgard sky to jagged glass. Beneath the vaulted crystal canopy of the High Sovereignty, Grand Scholar Vorian adjusted his optics to compensate for the glare. The Great Hall was a masterpiece of refractive resonance. Every pillar was grown from high-purity silicon, designed to channel the planet's core energy into a defensive lattice. This was the biocrystalline array, the pride of Ethelgard. It was more than architecture. It was a living weapon that required a pilot with perfect neural symmetry to function. Vorian watched Princess Caliph stand at the center of the hall, motionless. To any other species, she was a statue of obsidian and grace. To Vorian's sensors, she was a tragedy of interference. The 3 diagonal scars crossing her left cheek weren't just blemishes. They were refractive faults. During the defense of Sector Vares, the energy weapon that had nearly taken her head had also severed the delicate microchannels in her skin. Now, she could no longer interface with the crystal spires. She was a queen who could no longer trigger her own kingdom's shields. The silver lines were a reminder of, but that was another life. Now, they were just the reason she stood alone. The third suitor of the morning, a high lord from the inner rim, backed away. He offered a shallow bow, his eyes skittering away from the jagged path on her face as if the sight itself might infect his own symmetry. Vorian noticed a scent of burnt tea rising from his desk. His assistant had left a mug on the heating element again, a small, bitter distraction in the middle of a collapsing dynasty. Resonance readings in the hall shifted into the chaotic red spectrum. The court's disapproval didn't need words. It hummed through the crystal floor, a low-frequency rejection of a damaged air. Calith's jaw tightened, the only sign she felt the communal cold. A low chime, then the heavy, rhythmic thud of human boots. The herald announced the Soul Collective, and Captain Silas Vane walked into the light. He was tall for a human, his uniform tailored to lean lines that suggested discipline over decoration. He didn't carry the symmetrical elegance of the sovereignty, yet he moved with a calm, decisive stride. Silas didn't look at the crystal spires or the shimmering wealth of the hall. He walked straight toward Caliph, but Silas didn't stop at the required diplomatic distance. He closed the gap until he could see the depth of the silver lines on her skin. He didn't flinch. He didn't offer the polite, pitying smile of the previous suitors. Instead, he bowed at the respectful angle reserved for a decorated field commander. "Princess Caliph," Silas said, his voice carrying a warmth that bypassed the hall's cold resonance. "It is an honor to meet the tactical genius of Sector Vares. It's not every day a human looks at a broken legend and sees a masterpiece." If you want to hear how Silas Vane flipped the script on an entire empire, subscribe to the channel and join us. We're just getting to the heart of the resonance. Vorian's data stylus paused. The human wasn't looking at a flawed interface. He was looking at a soldier. Vorian watched the month of courtship unfold with a growing sense of disbelief. Every morning, Silas Vane met the princess in the tactical reflection halls, not to flatter her, but to dismantle her strategies. He pushed her. He forced her to adapt to the Soul Collective's chaotic, asymmetric maneuvers. It was a dance of intellect that left the rest of the court bewildered. During a trip to the ruins of Sector Vares, Vorian saw them standing among the survivors. A young girl reached out to touch the silver scars. Silas didn't look away. He stood behind Caliph, his posture radiating a quiet, protective force that the other suitors had lacked. Later, in the transport, Vorian saw the captain reach out. His fingers brushed the silver paths on her cheek. It was a gesture of profound intimacy, something no one had dared since the healers. Then, the Krell came. The command nexus smelled of cold ozone and burnt tea, a bitter lingering scent from a spilled mug that no one had the time to clean as the Krell fleet exited warp. Kalitha's hand hovered over the holographic controls, and Silas noticed how her fingers— no, stay focused on the tactical readout, he told himself, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. The Krell Trade Lord's face appeared on the screen, demanding the sole interloper in exchange for a ceasefire. Kalitha's response was a strike of ice. She wouldn't surrender the man who saw her clearly. As the Krell dreadnoughts opened their primary weapon bays, venting gouts of plasma that licked against the atmospheric interface of Ethelgard, Kalith knew that the standard shielding would buckle under the sheer kinetic force of a sustained bombardment without the manual refraction of the Void Shade. The vacuum was greedy, and now, adrift into freezing silence where the atmosphere ended, she wasn't alone. Silas was there, his respirator hissing with the shallow, panicked breaths of a man who shouldn't be in a vacuum, yet his hands were steady as they gripped the secondary alignment lever. They were hundreds of meters above the spires, suspended in the shimmering blue haze of the planetary shield. Kalith could feel the vibration of the entire world beneath her boots, a low, tectonic hum that matched the rhythm of her own blood. Done. She slammed the final gear into place, the metal screaming as it locked into the crystal housing. The Vari's coronet on her brow caught the glare of the enemy fire, acting as a final focal point for the neural link that her scarred skin could no longer carry. Light didn't just bend, it shattered. The incoming Krell pulses hit the crystalline lattice and turned back on themselves, tearing through the enemy hull in a cascade of brilliant, refracted death. The hegemony fleet, caught in the geometric perfection of their own kinetic backlash, disintegrated into glittering dust that rained down on the atmosphere like falling stars. Kalith felt the weight of the victory in the sudden, absolute stillness of the void. Silas reached out, his gloved hand finding hers, and for a moment, the two of them were the only solid things in a universe of light. The Vari's coronet rested on a velvet cushion within the High Sovereignty's archives, its 3 silver crystal inlays catching the morning sun. Once a symbol of a warrior's ruin, it was now recorded as the catalyst of an empire's salvation. In the silence of the vault, the brushed metal glowed with the quiet weight of a history finally and rightfully honored. That crown doesn't just represent a victory. It represents a choice to see strength where others see flaws. We'll be here tomorrow with another report from the edge of the void. So come back and keep your eyes on the stars.